Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance Sexton, thank you for joining us. Katie Roach, thank you for joining us. We got a lot of information to cover today. And what's going on with these new forms, Lance?
Well, the SBA has released probably the most important forms, new 1919 and new 1920, that are compliant with the new SOP 5010-6. And then they released the new religious eligibility worksheet, improved it quite a bit, made it easier to understand. And then the post-approval servicing checklist, a couple of changes to make it compliant. Primary reason is the 5010-6 changed a few things and created the requirement for some additional information on these forms, especially the 1919 and the 1920, and SBA has updated those to be compliant.
Katie,
and we're going to tell people how to take care of it tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I was going to say, Katie, why do I think there's going to be a lot of changes in a lot of forms and procedures in the next 6 months?
Well, aside from the new SOP, I think just with PPP and everything like that, it's going to affect it. And there's a lot of scrutiny with these programs right now. Everybody's really watching them. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get a lot of new forms and a lot of changes.
Please ask us whatever questions
Bob,
you can. Go ahead, Lance.
Well, with the new president, we will have a new administrator and new people in key positions at SBA. So there could be quite a few changes.
Well, it's going to be a bunch of changes between now and January 20th and after January 20th as well. Hey, we want to, please send us your questions. Send us, it could be any question you want. We love to answer questions. We love to play Stump the Professor. But we'll have any of your borrowers receive the new PPP questionnaire? And we were debating on how to phrase this. Lance, is it coming through? How do they get it? Is the lender going to send it to them? Does SBA send it to them directly? What's going to happen on that?
I would suspect that the participant lenders will be sending the 3509 and 3510 to the borrowers. It's, the form, Bob, I've had the opportunity to read through the forms, and they're going to make the borrowers jump through some hoops to certify that there was a need for the PPP loan on those PPP loans over $2 million.
Well, Katie's going to talk about this later. There's a law firm that they really did a nice job summarizing the draft 3509, 3510. And they said very specifically, hey, don't fill this out without legal advice. Obviously, they're self-serving, but I understand that. But they're telegraphing, better be careful filling out these forms, Lance.
Oh, well, absolutely, Bob, because if the borrower, our PPP borrowers checked the box to certify that they needed the PPP loans due to impact from COVID. And SBA's just making them dig a little deeper, answer a few more questions to make a determination if that was, in fact, a good faith certification, if it was true. Bob, I used my calculator. I was telling you before we came on the show, if you had a $2.5 million loan and they answer the question incorrect or not in a way that SBA would go ahead and give forgiveness, they're going to have a $106,000 a month payment going forward.
Well, if that's hospitality and good things happen in terms of why the stock market's rocking and rolling today, and there is a vaccine, and this gets solved sooner rather than later, they'll be able to make those payments.
Well, and the question is, Bob, did they spend the money? I think a lot of borrowers, as we had evolving guidance on PPP, some borrowers may just be sitting on the money waiting to determine if they're going to get forgiven.
Who've done that, yeah. Hey, we expect this answer to be over 90%, so let's see what happens. Have you been paid on a loan? And what I'm curious about is if there's a no answer. Oh, okay, 80%. No, does that surprise you, Lance?
Not completely, Bob. Some people may not have submitted a significant number of PPP loans for forgiveness at this point, but right now I think everybody should be in the process of getting those submitted.
Yeah, and 12% is that's a little bit higher than I thought it would be, which is, I think that's an unfortunate statistic. Finally, are you accepting the old 1919 if it's dated prior to November 2nd?
I think you'll get a mixed bag on this one, Bob. I really do. Yep.
Oh, there you go. Do you have an issue with them accepting it if it's dated prior to November 2nd?
Well, any project that came in after the 2nd obviously needs the new 1919. I think any project done or submitted after the 2nd needs the new 1920, absolutely. But if you had a project on your desk that you were working on, the borrowers had completed the 1919s prior to the 2nd, my understanding is that's going to be acceptable. And until I hear otherwise from SBA, of course, there was some language in the release that said they would be. So, I'm not surprised by the numbers and wouldn't have a tremendous amount of heartburn submitting a project that I'd been working on with the 1919 that was dated prior to the 2nd.
Katie, the questionnaires that came out, it appears these are draft questions. Cole did a great analysis of that. What are they telling their clients, their lenders?
So in general, this slide's just talking about that it in fact is draft that's been circulating. That was dated October 31st. So obviously we don't want to be misspeaking and saying that this is the official questionnaire. If anybody has the official questionnaire, feel free to send it over. I haven't seen it on the SBA website or anything like that. So I don't think it's out there, but it could be, especially since there were some people who were saying they were already filling it out, but they might be doing the draft. So that's about all that's on this slide.
Lance, do you know why, or Katie, maybe you may know why they want this taken care of in 10 business days? That seems awfully short for all the paperwork that needs to be compiled.
It's a mystery to me, Bob. These are large, complicated PPP loans. They're going to be a little more complicated borrowers. And 10-day time frame may be a little quick on these, but that's the time frame that they've set.
Do you agree? Go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of is maybe they're trying to limit fraud or something by limiting the amount of time they have to maybe make up some fake forms or something like that. It does limit them in what they can produce, and so hopefully that's part of the reason. I don't really know their full reason for that 10-day, though. That seems awfully short.
I love this. I love this admonition. Let's go to the next slide, Joseph, or actually 2 slides. One more. Borrowers should keep in mind that appearances matter when it comes to government regulators. Companies should be thoughtful about the tone of their response to the PPP necessity questionnaires. What are they getting at here, Katie?
I think really what they're saying is this program has received a lot of scrutiny from the public and also from some regulators. And especially if you got one of these larger loans, which these are only going to be sent to people who had those, $2 million loans. They're wanting to be a little bit careful about how they present it because you don't want it to look like you had fraud or anything like that. So you have to be careful about how you're presenting it both to the public and to regulators.
Lance, how do you telegraph the appropriate tone when you're talking about raw numbers?
I have some concern because I think that if you read through the forms, there are a number of these PPP borrowers with large PPP loans that are going to contradict their good faith certification if they answer them properly. And I do have, I mean, if I had a $2 million PPP loan and I was answering this form, Bob, I certainly probably would consult an attorney
Legal or
while
CPA.
answering the question.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it's, many of the questions, I think everybody jumped on the bandwagon and applied for a PPP loan. And I think there's going to be a handful of these larger PPP loans as a result of the questionnaires that will not be forgiven.
We understand, Katie, that the lender liability for loans less than 50,000 is nil. We don't even have to add. We just have to eyeball them. We don't have to add up, make sure that the numbers add or whatever. What is the lender liability / responsibility for these loans over, for the forgiveness apps over $2 million?
So we've received some kind of advice really that on these forms, it's likely that lenders are going to have to be copying over a portion of the information that the borrowers give them. And when they do that, they do need to be careful because obviously if they start misrepresenting anything when they're retyping, even making some errors with numbers or something like that could really create a problem for these loans because you're going to now get loans that maybe don't get forgiveness when they definitely need it. So you want to make sure you're really careful with the way you're typing those things in and everything like that.
Pay particular attention to that last paragraph, which says, first of all, they are calling this a draft. And Katie, I think you are right in calling that because the forms, even though they said they would be up on the Treasury and SBA websites, they're not yet. But it suggests the lender shall be responsible for typing the borrower's response into the forgiveness portal. Lenders should exercise caution gathering and submitting necessity questionnaires to the SBA to avoid potential liability, Lance.
Well, and I think if you're sitting back and your institution didn't make any PPP loans over $2 million, this is kind of a not null and void issue. But for those who do, obviously you probably didn't have a large number of loans over this size, but use caution and care when taking the borrower's information and putting the information into the portal.
Lance, you make a great point. Katie, how many loans are we talking about? What percentage of the fundings are we talking about?
It's been a little while since I looked, but I believe it was definitely, I think we're close to about 1% or less. It's a small
percent, 400, 500 loans, yeah.
Yeah, it's a small portion. It's not going to affect a lot of lenders, a lot of borrowers. It's going to be just those loans over $2 million.
Well, the takeaway is if you have one of these, you're going to process it differently than you do one under 50,000. You need to pay close attention to the rules. As soon as we get the finalized drafts and better guidance, we will definitely report on that. But this is where we are today. Today, they are a draft. We have not heard of. We haven't heard of the final yet, and we're looking for more guidance as well. So we'll keep you in tune.
Bob, and looking through the forms too, there are particular NAICS codes that probably are not going to have a problem. Bob, you mentioned hospitality. Hospitality was impacted incredibly by COVID-19, and if you kind of walk through the questions and answers on the form, I think most hospitality, not 100%, are going to be okay. Restaurants. I think restaurants that have PPP loans over $2 million, the majority of those, not 100%, are going to be okay because they were greatly, the questions, it asked questions like, were your revenues impacted? Were you required by government mandate to operate at a reduced level? And restaurants obviously had that occur. So, there's some industries that may have gotten loans over $2 million that probably are going to be okay when they walk through the questionnaire. But there are some borrowers who may have gotten a PPP loan, had good liquidity. Sales didn't get impacted a lot. Those loans are going to have a tough time getting forgiven when you walk through the questionnaire.
Let's go to the questions, Lance. SBA noted that full amounts were forgiven, but the net disbursement to the bank for one loan was 1,000 less than the total PPP forgiveness. They've contacted SBA through the 800 number, and SBA refers them back to the August 2020 update. What should the lender do, Lance?
So I would continue that PPP questions at SBA.gov. It sounds like SBA is indicating the borrower may have gotten a $1,000 idle advance, and
Right.
you may go back to the borrower and ask, "Did you get an idle advance?" The system is going to have that in there, and that appears to be what it is. But the only way I know to get answers is to either call the 800 number or use that PPP Forgiveness Questions at SBA. I think I've got that right, at SBA.gov email address. If I've got it wrong, Bob, could we get it out there for questions on PPP, the email address?
Let's do that tomorrow, Katie. We have that list of all of those. I would also do the email. That way you have a record of memorialized.
But it appears SBA is saying they got an idle advance.
Yeah. This question keeps coming up, and it makes sense with all the business acquisition loans in 7A. But we did a PPP loan for a business that had two partners. One partner is now buying out the other partner. We haven't submitted the forgiveness app yet. What do we do? Do we hold it in escrow? What's your recommendation, Lance?
You've got two partners. One's buying the other one out. The PPP loan was given to the entity. This is a tough one. I would hold it in forgiveness, just or hold it in escrow just to be a prudent lender. But if you look at this transaction, you've got an entity that got the PPP loan. There are no personal guarantees on this loan. This is a tough one too. I would submit it to the PPP questions, but as I think through the PPP loan, it's made to the entity. And there's no personal guarantees, and the entity still exists. So the obligation is the entity.
So maybe it comes down to a level of materiality. How much is the loan in the overall transaction, right, Lance?
I think the size makes a huge difference on this. And if whoever asked this question, if you can come back, I think it makes a difference. I think it would be smart to hold in escrow until the forgiveness process is completed. That way you do not have an issue. So my vote as a good SBA citizen, Bob, would be to hold it in escrow.
Dan has come to the rescue. It is PPP Forgiveness Request at SBA.gov. Michael, can you put that in the dashboard, please? Thank you. So thank you very much, Dan.
Thank you, Dan.
And Shane is clarifying that, yes, the borrowers had to pay the difference when the idle advance was granted. So either they need to come up with that, or we need to make a loan for the balance of that. What happens when your PPP borrowers file Chapter 11?
Well, the entity files Chapter 11, and we've not been given guidance yet, Bob, on what happens when you have a PPP loan that's not forgiven. We haven't been given guidance on how do you collect on the 100% guarantee that SBA provides. In this particular case, my guess is they're not going to file for forgiveness. So you're going to have a loan where you're going to request SBA to pay the guarantee. So my best answer, Bob, is we're waiting for additional guidance on how that's going to occur.
Are we looking at a situation where the lender has to incur legal fees and go through that process, Lance?
You even ask a
I love it
bigger
when
and
you
better
stumble
question.
like that.
Guys, forgive me, but from a servicing perspective, we've not been given much guidance. We've not been told how we're going to submit for repayment on a guarantee where the borrower's not paying back. A Chapter 11 bankruptcy would be a normal non-payment default event that would put a loan into liquidation, which would start the process of putting together your
Yeah,
purchase
but you have
demand.
to, even if it's, but you still have to file
Oh, yeah.
paperwork and hire attorneys. Yeah. Okay. We'll
But
follow up on
here,
that.
Bob, the big question, Bob, is on every SBA loan that goes into liquidation, they're carrying preservation expenses. Sometimes they're legal expenses, and those expenses are reimbursable.
I apologize for running over. Yeah.
We've not been
We'll
given
follow up.
guidance on that.
Real quick, Lance, we're talking about the loans under 50,000 and again, collecting documents. Should we actually get the documents or simply a resolution from the borrower indicating they have all these? Does that replace the document requirement? And they say a lot of these clients that we have are new to our institution.
I want the documents in my bank.
Okay, very good.
So
Real quick, people have asked what I'm wearing. I'm wearing the poppy in Remembrance Day for veterans of World War I. I'm a big World War I aficionado. As an aside, Whole Foods employees got in trouble for wearing poppies up in Canada. Whole Foods backed off on that. We will be closed on the 11th, so there will be no show. And remember, and the rule is following the UK custom, which is you start at the end of October and you wear it through Remembrance Day or Veterans Day. How's that sound, Lance?
that sounds great, Bob. Good job.
Both my grandfathers served in World War I. So anyway, enough about that. Hey, thank you all for joining us. We respect your time. Sorry, ran over a little bit, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Thank you for joining us for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.
Have a great afternoon.